And as far as props go today, you might need the strap if you struggle to get your foot in the quad stretch. So reaching behind you to get the foot, if the knee doesn't bend well, or the quads are really tight, or the shoulder doesn't like the position, grab your strap for that purpose. You might need the blocks for some of the transitions that we're going to do, and also we'll have it a couple of times in between the knees. So you might want the block for that. If you don't have it, it's okay. You can get by without it. I'm going to be mostly using the blanket to pad my knees today. And I guess I should say, if you don't have two yoga blocks, grab two towels, two blankets, two pillows that are about the same size for a relaxation pose that we'll do towards the end of the practice. Actually, I'm sorry, we do need the blanket or the towel at the very beginning for a prop thrust. So grabbing that blanket or the towel if you don't have it. And the practice today, we're going to be working on activation of the glute maximus muscles, so the buttocks muscles. And I think when you think about rowing and the lower body, you think about the quad strength, and that is definitely a big part of the drive phase of the stroke, the initial part of the drive phase of the stroke. But once you start to lean that back, the torso back, you want your glute maximus to engage and do some work. And also a stronger glute maximus is going to be padding for the buttocks, padding for the sciatic nerve that's running underneath it a little bit deeper. So we'll go into some sciatic nerve information as well a little later in the practice. And some of this, some of you will be like, yeah, got this. Some of you will be like, where's my glute maximus? I can't tell if I'm engaging it or not. And all of this will be helpful and hopefully be able to translate into your form in your stroke. So we're going to use the blanket here, and I'm folding it up folding it up and that blanket into like a skinny rectangle. And this is going to go on my mat a third or fourth of the way down. I'm going to be lying on this face up. So the top folded edge of this mat is going to be just below my shoulder blades. So we're actually starting out in this kind of chest opening position, upper back stretch. In yoga, this is called supported fish pose. So my shoulder blades, my shoulders are above the blanket, so they're resting on the floor. You can bring your arms out to the sides here. Maybe you have your knees bent, especially if it feels like a strain to the lower back in this position. If you don't have a lot of mobility in that upper back, see if this blanket is too thick. If it feels like too much and it's kind of pushing into that mid-back area, you might need to unfold it, have a little less height in the blanket. We're going to be here for a few moments, so it's worth kind of adjusting here, getting comfortable, lifting the hips, lowering, resetting, finding some stillness at the very beginning here, maybe closing the eyes. And at the beginning here in the stillness, we're turning our focus to the breath. So in yoga, unlike other movement practices, and certainly unlike cardio aerobic type of exercise, we're breathing just through the nose. So it's both inhale and exhale through the nose. And you may notice here in this supported fish pose, the blanket is opening the ribs. The front ribs are sort of spread out and in that stretched out position. And so normally we expand that rib cage to breathe in, but the rib cage is already expanded to a certain degree. So you might feel the belly movement here a little bit more. You might feel that diaphragmatic movement of the breath. So breathing in, the belly expanding, breathing out, the belly contracting. And you don't need to make it do that, just notice, observe. Slow the breathing down a little bit here so that you're lengthening out both inhale and exhale. Take a few more breaths and we'll set an intention for the practice. So bring to mind the reason that you've shown up today. And it can be very specific to you. I'm going to take care of my low back. I'm going to release some tension. I'm going to remain curious and open to movement. Thinking of the reason you've shown up today, and bring this thought to the front of your mind and breathe with intention. So I'm going to begin to move from here. Now I'm going to keep that blanket at my mid back, but if it's getting uncomfortable there, you could always take it out. I'm going to have you bend the knees, feet flat. The heels are lined up with your sitting bones. We're going to do a tiny little bridge here. Bridge meaning we're lifting the hips in the back. But I'm only going to lift my hips just to the height of the blanket. So I'm only lifting like an inch or so, inch and a half maybe. So I'm going to lift the hips just to the height of that blanket, a tiny little lift, and then lower it back down. Now this time I want you to engage your glutes. So think about squeezing the buttocks and lifting the hips just that inch or so off the ground, and then lower it back down. We're going to do a few more. So we squeeze the glutes, squeeze the buttocks, inhale, lift the hips, tiny bit, relax the glutes and lower on the exhale. We'll do a few more. So we're just consciously using the glutes to lift. And for this movement, we're taking work off of the abs and off of the lower back. And it's not that it's bad to use your abdominal muscles or your lower back for this, but we are intentionally engaging those glutes so you can feel in your body what it feels like for that glute maximus muscle to engage and move through the hips or move the torso in this instance as well. And then we'll lower back down here after the next one. And I'm going to roll to the side just to take that blanket out. Come onto the back again and pull the knees in, gently hugging in, holding shins or backs of thighs, and rock a little bit here, side to side, a gentle motion. And maybe you circle those hips and knees. And maybe you feel those glutes stretching, relaxing in through here, circling both ways. So we're going to do a similar bridge movement here. We'll lower both feet down to the ground. This one is a half bridge, so it's again another small lift, but we're lifting a little bit higher. And in a moment, once we're there, we're going to try to lift one heel and then the other with keeping the hips level. So I'm going to lift just my hips and lower back. So I'm not going all the way up. Now I'm going to stay in this position and I'm going to work to keep my hips really level. And I can place my hands there just to monitor the levelness of the hips. And on your inhale, lift one heel up off the ground and exhale, lower the heel back down. Other side, we inhale, lift that heel and exhale, lower. Keep going, alternating heel lifts here and work to keep your hips really level, like you had a carpenter's level here. You want to keep that bubble right in the center. And if you're like, Lara, this is easy peasy and you want more challenge, lift the whole foot and lower. You don't have to lift high. You don't have to kick that foot up to the ceiling, but work on keeping the hips level. And you might begin to feel The leg that's down, that glute maximus is having to engage here to hold the hips level and not let them sag. You might be feeling it in your hamstrings too. And after the next one, lower both feet, lower the hips and back down. And walk the feet out to the outer edges of the mat, knees bent, and gently rock the legs side to side, a little kind of windshield wiper movement. So noticing that we're doing a little relax release after we've done that muscular engagement. We want the muscles to activate and be strong, but we don't want them holding tension all the time. When you're ready, rolling on over, we'll come up here to hands and knees. I'm going to use my blanket here to pad my knees, but that's an optional comfort tool as opposed to an alignment one. Tabletop position, the knees are under the hips, the wrists are under the shoulders, or alternate hand position if the wrists don't like that pressure or the angle. It could be loose fist instead of flat palm, or forearms down, having the elbows under shoulders. Cat and cow movements of the spine, but we're going to initiate movement with the tailbone here. So instead of the middle of the back, we'll drop the tailbone down first. You round through the lower back and then the middle back, and tuck the chin at the end of the movement, and then come out of it leading with the tailbone again. So tailbone tips up, belly towards the floor, chest forward, lift the head, gazing slightly forward at the end. So again, tailbone initiates, we exhale, drop it down, roll through the spine, head is the last thing to tuck under. Inhale, tip the tailbone up, unfurling, unrolling the spine. Do a few more here. If you're struggling with this sort of sequential top to bottom movement, whatever kind of cat and cow feels good to you or more natural. So it's one of my favorite variations to really loosen up the spine, get a little bit more mobility and ease of movement as we start to move through the rest of the practice. Your next inhale, bring this back into neutral spine, that tabletop position again. We'll circle the hips here. So bring the hips out towards one side, back towards your heels, and then bring them to the other side and forward again. So the breath as we inhale, hips to the side and back. Exhale the hips to the other side and forward. And depending on the tension, the back or the hips, maybe your movements are a little smaller. Maybe it feels good to make them bigger. You push the ribs out to the sides. Maybe the hips come closer to the heels. But remember, more is not always better, especially when it comes to stretch, reverse directions. And here's where you might hear a few pops through the knees, the shoulders, the spine. As long as it doesn't hurt, it's all good. Maybe even the ankles there as you come back. One more circling. And we'll come back here to that hands and knees position. And we'll do a little bit with the core, engaging those glutes again. So firm the belly and lengthen the spine. So the tailbone and top of the head are reaching in opposite directions. We're going to bring our left leg back here and the toes up. Toes point down towards the floor. So the whole leg is up, toes point down. We're making like a big rainbow arcing motion with this leg while you keep your hips stable. So I'm going to bring that foot out to the side, and then I'm going to lift that foot up and over to the opposite side. Tap the foot down. Inhale up and out. Tap the toes down. Exhale, lift up and cross it over, tap it down. We'll do just a couple more here. Keep the hips really level, the stability like we did in that half bridge. And you might be feeling that glute maximus, maybe the hamstrings working here. We'll lower that knee back down. Maybe take a few cat cows or wag of the tail or Sit back, shake out the wrists, roll those shoulders. And of course, we'll do this on the other side. So find the hands and knees are on the forearms. Firm the belly, solid wall of your abs, lengthen the spine. Other leg back, toes point down. Here's that sort of drawing the rainbow with the foot. So we tap the foot out to the side and then lift it up and over, cross it to the opposite side. So we inhale up and out, tap the foot, exhale up, cross over, tap the foot. A few more here, keeping the hips level, keep the spine long. You don't need to see the foot, so you don't need to look back. And we'll bring that knee back down here on the floor. And we'll come into a child's or puppy pose, taking a little break. So child's pose is hips over heels, forehead resting down. And that can be a good pose for some of us, but puppy pose is the alternative, hips over knees, forehead down. And that is a good one to keep compression out of the spine or your disc if you have any bone density issues here, herniated disc or history of one. Or it could be hip, knee, or feet, toe cramp issues. This puppy pose might be more comfortable for you. Take a few breaths here, slow that breathing down. Opportunity to always come back to that lengthened breath and resting position. And your intention, this thought we said at the beginning of the practice. So you can stay here resting a little bit more, or coming back up here to hands and knees. We're going to do another glute maximus activation exercise, and this one is a kneeling squat. So padding under the knees might be helpful. If you don't have that blanket, maybe fold up the middle of the mat or find a pillow from the couch. But we're going to be standing up here on our knees. So the form is like a regular squat, but what I like about this one is we take the quadriceps mostly out of the picture, and it sort of forces you to use your glute maximus. So I'm actually going to have you bring your hands back here, cupping your butt cheek, right in the middle of that fleshy part of the butt. That's where our glute maximus is going to be. So I want your hands to be able to feel that muscle engaging. So we keep that spine long and then hinge from the hip. So the butt goes back, we bend at the knees, but the spine stays long. And now think, squeeze the glutes, squeeze the butt to rise up, pushing the hips forward and lengthening the top of the head up. We'll do that again. Relax the glutes as you sit back, spine staying long. Exhale, squeeze the buttocks, squeeze the glutes to rise up. We're going to do a few more here. So you get to relax the glutes as you hinge back, and then you engage them to come up. If you're like, no, I can feel them. I can feel them in my body. I can feel them under my hands engaging. Then maybe hands on the hips. Two more. So notice this is you're using the glutes to push the torso back, right? So partway through the drive phase, or most of the way after you've straightened your knees or almost straightened your knees, you start to hinge that torso back. That glute maximus should be helping you in that position as you go into the finish at the second half of the drive phase of your stroke. All right, we'll bring those hands back down or to the forearms. We're going to bring one foot back and just tuck your toes under, shifting forward and back. So you're bending the toes as you shift forward and press the heel back, calf stretch. So warming up the ankle, the toes here, calf muscle, sole of the foot. Switch sides. Those of you who come to class frequently know that next pose is going to be our downward facing dog. Keep in mind that can be a challenging pose, so feel free to lower the knees. You don't have to stay as long, or you could be in that puppy pose, which is basically a kneeling down dog. Or you could come back to that kneeling squat if you want to feel a little bit more of that glute max activation. All right, so for down dog, hands come a little forward of shoulders, fingers are spread. Lift your hips up and back. So if you're tight through the backs of those legs, which I know a lot of you are, bend those knees a little bit, push the sitting bones up and back so spine lengthens. And you might have to bend those knees quite a bit to keep that spine long. Breathe here. Relax the head between the upper arms. Maybe you add a little movement of pedaling of the feet or lift the heels and release them down. Doing that a few more times. Spine staying long. Head relaxed. Breathing. Settle here into that down dog. Look forward. We're going to step the left foot between the hands, and it may not get there on the first one. So lower that right knee, left hand helping this foot forward, ankle underneath the knee, lift the torso, find your balance. You may need the wall, hand on the thigh to steady yourself. So the glute maximus muscles are hip extensors, pushing the legs back, or torso extensors, depending on which part is anchored. The opposite muscle group are your hip flexors. So we're going to give a little stretch, a lengthening through the hip flexors here. Lengthen the tailbone down towards the floor. This is going to level the pelvis. So if it has tended to tip forward or tip backward, we're going to get that tailbone to reach straight down, pelvis level. Top of the head reaching up here towards the sky. So that lengthens our spine in both directions. You could stay here. Maybe this is enough stretch on the front of the right hip and thigh, or bend the front knee, but keep that tailbone lengthening straight down. Just enough to feel some stretch on the front of the hip and thigh. Hands could stay at the hips or reach up, hold elbows. Lengthen the elbows towards the ceilings. It's going to get that spine to lengthen up a little bit more. And you might get that psoas, that deep hip flexor, to stretch a little bit more as it's connected to the bottom 6 vertebrae of the spine. And we'll release the arms here, a couple of backward shoulder rolls. Hands come down to the floor. Step this back into a plank. Lower the knees or keep them up. We're going to lower down to the ground. A little cobra, shoulder blades towards the spine, the back waist to lift the head and chest. Here's that low cobra. That could feel the best. Maybe you press a little higher, a bigger back bend, but don't force it. Tuck the toes. We're going to make our way to down dog, maybe through hands and knees, or pull that low belly in, shifting the hips up and back directly there. Remember, you might still need that bend in the knees so the spine is long. Take a few more pedals of the feet or shakes of the head. Looking forward, it'll be the right foot between the hands. You might need to help it there. Lower that back knee, lifting the torso. Take your time and find your balance. Tailbone lengthens straight down towards the floor. So if that pelvis is tipped forward, we're bringing it straight down. If the pelvis is tipped backwards, we're bringing it straight down. And top of the head reaching up towards the ceiling. Maybe this is enough stretch in the front of that left hip and thigh. If you don't feel much, bend the front knee, but keep that tailbone lengthening down. You could keep the arms out of it, stay here, breathe, or hold elbows above the head, lengthening the elbows towards the ceiling. Take a few breaths here. Release the hands down to the floor. We're going to step the back foot to the front foot. Forward fold here for a few breaths. Options of the ragdoll, knees bent, upper body draped over lower body. Similar reasons to do this option as there were for options for child's pose. Would be feet wide, butt back forms on your thighs. So this one, no compression going through the spine. So safe one if you have osteoporosis, osteopenia, herniated disc, or you're really tight in the hamstrings. Either pose, maybe you try a little sway. You're in that ragdoll, holding elbows or shaking the head. One more breath. Bend the knees, strong legs. Inhale, rise up to stand. Roll those shoulders back and down. So we're going to come into a standing glute maximus activation. It's very similar to the kneeling squat we did. This one is called a good morning, and you may have done this with the trainer at the gym. But we're going to stand with our feet about shoulder distance apart, put a little bend to the knees. We're hinging from the hips again, so spine stays long, hands on the hips. We're hinging from the hips, sitting the butt back. Now to rise up, again, maybe you put the hands there on the glutes, squeeze the buttocks to rise up to stand. So release the glutes here, tiny bend to the knees, hinge forward from the hips on the inhale, exhale, squeeze the butt to rise up. We're going to do a few more. Maybe keep the hands there, getting that feedback, or whether those buttocks muscles, the glute maximus, are engaging and turning on. This is a good one to do before you even get in the boat, to wake those glutes up, to remember, how does it feel to engage my glutes, to tip my torso back, right? So basically what we're doing here is what happens partway through the drive phase, so where you almost straighten those knees and then you start to hinge that torso back from the hips. Glute maximus, largest muscles in the body, literally. They should be doing this pushing work here. All right, come on up, shake it out, roll those shoulders. I'm going to move that blanket out of the way. This is a similar movement from chair pose in yoga. I'm going to use a block between my knees. Now, what's going to be different is that first one, the good mornings were wider apart, right? And this is much wider than what you'd be in the boat. So we're going to bring the block, or maybe it's a rolled blanket or a towel, between the knees, right? So this is going to keep you roughly ankles, knees, hips in line with each other. So chair pose is basically that same thing we just did, but now instead of the feet are out wide, and you can go a little deeper in the knee bend if you choose, if that works for your knees. So I'm not squeezing the block hard, I'm just keeping it from falling out. That spine is long, tailbone down, top of the head up. So I'm going to bend the knees and hinge at the hips. So you can sit back a little bit more here. And we're going to take it slow on the first one so that spine is long. And as we stand up, you're going to engage through the quadriceps, the thighs. And then once you get partway up, I want you to squeeze those glutes to get you all the way up. Right? Relax the glutes. We sit back on the inhale. So come up, you exhale, you engage the quadriceps, but then pretty quickly squeeze those glutes to rise up. Let's do a few more. Inhale, sitting back. Exhale, squeeze the glutes, rise up. A few more. You could go even deeper if your knees and your ankles let you go there. It'll be closer to the position you are in the catch. And then that initiation into the drive and all the way to the finish. We're certainly extending the hips more than you would in the boat, but not a bad thing here. In fact, work on strengthening through a larger range of motion. All right, we'll come on up and let that block go. Well, actually, just pause here. So this is something that you could practice in the boat if you're in a single, but certainly on on the erg, you could put a block between your knees, or maybe it's a rolled towel, and you might, depending on that, you might need to be in that wider yoga block. And then you could do that same motion, like don't use the arms, but try this motion coming into the catch, slowly coming out, engaging the quads, engaging the glutes to come up. So you could do a few of those before you start in earnest into the training and your regular stroke. We'll come up to the front of the mat. We're working on leveling the pelvis a little bit here, doing it from a lunge position. So take a big to medium step back with this left foot. So often what happens here in this crescent lunge is that pelvis will tip forward. We kind of crunch to the low back and we've lost the core. And I should say this, if your back toes don't like that position or hard to balance, you can shorten the stance, bring that back heel down, that front knee bending. We're going to level that pelvis like we did in the knee down lunge. So tailbone down towards the earth. If the hip flexors are tight, you might have to bend that back knee a little bit to get there. Keep the tailbone down, reach the top of the head up towards the ceiling. Relax the shoulders. Now, one option is to stay right here and not worry about the forward and back. Gaze focus, level, breathe. Or we're going to step the back foot to the front foot, come into a little tiptoe, and then we step it back into the lunge. So we inhale, back foot to the front foot into the tiptoe, exhale into lunge. Now pause. So I want you to think about using your right glute, that right butt cheek, to pull the back leg forward. So you dig the front heel in, and we're going to step the back foot to the front, squeezing that right glute, and then inhale into the lunge. May have mixed up the breath. So exhale, squeeze the right glute, tiptoe to the front, inhale into the lunge. You could stay with the tiptoe or drive that knee forward. But as this back leg comes forward, squeeze the glute of the front leg. One more. This is a little harder because it's one side at a time versus both. All right, bring that foot down, shake it out, roll the shoulders. Other side, of course. So it'll be the right foot back or whichever one you didn't do. Crescent lunge could be back heel up or shorten the stance, back heel down. Front knee bent though. Tailbone down towards the earth. If the right hip flexors are tight, you might need to bend that back knee a little. Top of the head reaching up. Here, the pelvis is level. Breathe. So you could stay with this or the forward and backward. So I'm going to squeeze butt cheek of the front leg to drive that foot in and pull the back foot to the front tiptoe and then step into the lunge. So focus gaze on the spot straight ahead, squeeze this front glute, tiptoe, and then release it, step into that lunge. So you could do a few more here, tiptoe, or maybe you go right into that knee drive, or maybe it's tiptoe to knee drive, getting that glute involved. One more, bring it forward, and then lower that foot down, shake out your legs, roll the shoulders. We will be doing some glute relaxation and stretching towards the end. If you're like, boy, I'm already feeling this a little bit, no worries. So we're going to come into a quad stretch, leading us right into a balance pose, and maybe use the quad stretch as your balance pose here. So keeping in mind the squishier your surface, the more challenging it is to balance. You might step off the mat for more harder surface. You might have a hand at the wall. You might need the strap if you struggle with a quad stretch. So maybe go ahead and putting that on your shoulders if you think you might need it. So if you're at the wall, we're going to balance on the foot closest to the wall. Spread those toes out, place them down, spread out, shift your weight onto it. Focus the gaze on the spot straight ahead, and then we're going to bend that other knee, reach back and find it with the hand, or lasso that strap around the ankle and bring it up behind you, or hold onto it down lower. Lengthen that kneecap towards the earth and the top of the head towards the sky. Take a few breaths here, opening through the quads. Breathe. So I said the hip flexor is opposing muscle group to that glute maximus muscle. One of your quadriceps is also a hip flexor, so it's not just a knee muscle, it's also a hip muscle. So we're lengthening, opening up through those opposing muscle groups. And the other muscle that's a hip extensor, like the glute maximus, is the hamstring. So you're going to do a little hamstring strength from here. So you're going to let that foot go, but stay in the balance. Bring that leg back, knee straight. And we're going to bend the knee, heel towards the butt, and then straighten it back out. So we exhale, bend the knee, inhale, straighten it. Maybe hand on the wall, maybe not, or one or two fingers or hand hovering. A couple more here. You might feel that mid back of the thigh, posing muscle groups to the quads and the hip flexors. All right, let this go. Whew, shake it out, shake it out. All right, turn around. We're going to do the other side. So quad stretch first. But we were just working that leg. We're working, spread the toes, shift the weight, focus the gaze on the spot straight ahead. Here's our quad stretch. Hand can stay on the wall. Maybe you don't need it. Kneecap towards the floor, top of the head towards the ceiling. Breathe. All right, you could stay here longer. Maybe you need a longer quad stretch. If you'd like to do that hamstring muscle engagement, release the foot, but bring that leg back. You could start with the toes down, long spine. We're going to bend the knee, heel towards the butt, and then straighten that leg. So the leg is going back the whole time. The thigh is back the whole time. Keep that tailbone lengthening down. And you might be really feeling the hamstrings working here. There's no weight. We're not on a machine. There's no TheraBand pulling against you. The resistance is your quads and your hip flexors. All right, lower that foot. Shake it out. Roll those shoulders. All right, we're going to come down to the floor into a seated pose. Now, I'm going to use my blanket here. I'm going to fold it up so that I can get a little elevation under my sitting bones. And I'll turn to the side so you can see why. So if you have a tendency for the low back to round, if your hamstrings are tight, the spine kind of comes into this C shape. We're about to do a twist. Now, if I'm going to twist through that rounded back position, I'm going to get a lot of shearing through the discs in my vertebrae and compression through the joints at the back of the spine. So if I sit on a little bit of elevation, my sitting bones are right behind that folded edge of the blanket. It starts to tip my pelvis forward a little bit and allows me to sit up taller with a little bit more ease. So we'll bend that front knee, bend one knee rather, and cross that foot to the outside of the other thigh. So I'm going to hug that knee in with the opposite arm. Same side arm as the bent leg is going to come behind me. Now, its job is to help me lengthen that spine so that when I twist, I don't have those shearing forces. So spine long, hug that knee in, and gently twist the chest, the shoulders, the gaze towards the side of the bent leg. Breathe. So for me, when I keep that spine really long, I'm feeling more of this outer hip stretch. Now this is getting into my glute medius a little bit more, different from the glute maximus. Glute medius is a muscle, it pushes the leg out to the side, but it also stabilizes the hips, especially in single leg standing positions. We'll let this go, both legs out in front, shake it out. And we're going to do the other side, bend that knee, cross the foot over, hug that knee in with the opposite arm, other hand behind you, sit really tall. Sometimes I kind of move my belly out of the way so I can hug that knee in a little bit more. Chest gaze towards the bent leg side. You don't need to crank it around. This yoga pose in most yoga classes are traditionally done with that elbow hooked on the outside of the knee, but I find that I have a tendency to over leverage, and then I'm twisting through my lumbar spine and the sacroiliac joints where there's really it's not designed for rotation. The rotation is designed from the mid and upper back, and certainly from the top most joint, skull and neck. We'll unwind here, bring both legs out in front, shaking them out. We're going to come onto our backs. We're going to do a couple more of that glute maximus activation moves here. So My hope is that you will find one or more of these exercises, at least one of these exercises where you can really feel that glute maximus activating. So a couple more variations of bridge pose here. So we'll bend the knees, pull the heels in so that they're close to the sitting bones and at least lined up with them. So I'm pulling one knee in towards me. Now you could hold the shin or the back of the thigh or just keep it in that bent position. It's really not about pulling this leg in hard. It's just that leg position starts to flatten the low back a little bit. So I'm going to push through the foot of my down leg to lift both hips. And then I'm going to come right back down. So I'm not pausing. So I'm pressing into the foot, maybe even more into the heel a little bit. Inhale, lift the hips. And exhale, lower. We'll do a few more here. So it's a single leg bridge, but because I have this opposite knee bent, it takes the low back muscles out of the picture and it's forcing you to use your glute maximus and your hamstrings a little bit more here. Let's do one more. All right, lower on down, both feet down, maybe a few of those windshield wiper movements. Maybe you notice the difference between the sides here. That one I just did, I like really felt my glutes, so I was feeling a little fatigued, a little tired. And we've been doing a lot with the glute maximus. So if you fatigue and you can't really do it without kind of losing the form or cheating a little bit, stop and rest, right? Instead of supporting a pattern that's not the one that we want. All right, we're going to do the other side. So heels in pretty close. Pull that other knee in towards you. Press down through the foot, maybe a little bit more through the heel. Inhale, lift the hips. Exhale, lower. And we'll do a few more. Don't be surprised that you can't lift very high here. That's what happens when you take that low back out of it and you don't let the low back come into a back bend, an arch. So normal bridge is a back bend. We are taking the back bend out of it and it's just a hip thrust. So that way we're using glute maximus and the hamstrings more. Another good warm up here before getting in the boat or going for a run or a bike ride or a walk. So we say, hey, wake up, glutes, hamstrings, we need you to get on board and help out. Lower the feet down, maybe a few windshield wipers. We just have one more and then we get to rest it, y'all. So you might be like, Laura, I'm done. I can't do any more. Just stay here, rest, maybe butterfly or knock knee position or knees to chest. We're going to come back to, this is going to be a full bridge, but we're going to use the block between the knees. So for that same reason we had the block between the knees in the chair pose, what this does is keep the knees in line with the hips. So think about when you come into the catch position, you want everything in line with each other. You don't want those knees knocking out to the side. If those knees end up going out to the side, you can't use your glute maximus very much. Use your glute medius and your piriformis muscles, deeper, smaller muscles that are not designed for this work. And then you get tendonitis, bursitis, iliotibial band, IT band problems, knee problems. So keep the block between the knees, lift the hips in the back. We're going to stay, maybe pull those shoulder blades in underneath. So getting a little bit more of the back bend, pressing your hands into the floor. Now see if you can add a little extra squeeze of the glutes to keep those hips up. Try to keep the block from falling out between or falling to the floor. Take one more inhale. Exhale, arms out from underneath, coming on down. Taking that block out here. Might be nice to come into this happy baby. So you pull the knees in towards you. Knees come out wider than the ribs, just a little wider. Hold backs of thighs or ankles or soles of feet and gently rock. So we've been doing quite a bit of glute maximus work. In a moment, we'll get a relaxation pose for the glute maximus. Underneath the glute maximus is the piriformis muscle. This is a hip rotator. It's a small little muscle. Underneath the piriformis is your sciatic nerve. We'll lower the feet back down. Sometimes when you have some scar tissue, if you have tense or tight muscles, that piriformis especially, which happens when that glute maximus doesn't activate, you can get some compression on the sciatic nerve. So we're going to do a sciatic nerve glide, or nerve flossing, it is also called. Nerves don't like to be stretched, so we don't hold it. We're going to give a little tug and a release, a tug and release. So I'm going to pull one leg in towards you, hold onto the back of the thigh, interlace fingers, but I'm not pulling that leg in. Notice my elbows are straight, the knee is bent, the foot is relaxed. We're going to start to straighten that knee. So we're not straightening it all the way, and pull that foot towards you. So here's that little tug on the sciatic nerve, and then we let it go. Knee bends, foot relaxes. So we inhale, start to straighten, but not all the way the knee. Pull the foot towards you, and then we exhale, bring it back down. We'll do a few more here. So this is a pretty gentle movement, meaning you shouldn't be feeling a whole lot here. You might feel that hamstring stretch, the calf stretch, but the sciatic nerve is going from the buttocks down the back of the leg all the way to the foot. So when we start to straighten the knee, pull the foot back, we give that tug from the foot end of the nerve, and then we release it. And we do a few more, keeping it gentle. All right, we're going to let this go, switching sides. So interlace fingers on the back of the other thigh. We inhale, start to straighten the knee, pull the foot back. Exhale, let it go. If you don't have much of a glute maximus, and if you tend to sit a little further behind your sitting bones on the seat in the boat, you can start to compress the sciatic nerve, and you can start to get some numbness in the butt, or tingling or pain. That can travel down the back side of the leg all the way to the foot if you end up with a lot of compression here. So working that glute maximus keeps the compression out. We didn't talk about pelvic positioning on the boat, but that's a big part of it. Sciatic nerve glide is a good one to do if you start to feel that numbness, tingling, or pain from the buttocks down the back of the leg. And then we'll lower that foot back down. And note, we didn't do a whole bunch. We kept it very gentle. Maybe gently rock the knees side to side. You can overdo the sciatic nerve glide, nerve flossing. So you wouldn't want to do more than 10, say 10 at a go, and twice a day is plenty. More than that, you're going to start to irritate the nerve. All right, so now we get to the relaxation position for the glute maximus. Coming into a butterfly position. So I'm going to have the soles of the feet together, knees coming out to the sides. I like putting my blocks, or could be the rolled up blankets or the pillows, under the outer knees. So this is less of an inner thigh stretch and more of a relaxation for the back of the hips, the back of the buttocks. Sometimes it helps me relax a little bit more just to have folded blanket on the hips, low belly here. This is it. So you don't have to activate anything, you don't have to stretch, you don't have to move. Which sounds like, oh, that's it, easy, but sometimes it's hard to let things rest, especially when you've been focusing on activating, engaging, and doing. So in this position, with the knees out to the sides, the glute maximus and the piriformis muscles underneath there get to relax. These muscles are in a slackened position for the most part. When the muscle is slackened, it's neither being stretched, and it's in a position that it mechanically has a hard time contracting. So this is a good one to end this practice on, or close to the end of the practice, because we want the glute maximus to know when to engage, how to engage, and be strong enough to supply the movements that we need, but we don't want it engaged all the time. That would be very painful. So here we're reminding those muscles, hey, you did a good job. Now it's time to relax, and remember, at rest, you don't need to be tensing, tightening, or engaging at all. Coming into that lengthened breath, coming back to your intention for the practice. These relaxation positions where we slacken the muscles, you want to be here for at least 90 seconds. That's how long it takes for that muscle to relax, and stay relaxed when you come out of the position for the usually. That's a muscle that tends to stay tight. You kind of have to do it on repetition because its default is tense. So you could stay here longer. If this is feeling really good to you, you could stay with this. And especially if you are hyper flexible or very flexible, sometimes the relaxation is more important than the stretch. But if it would feel good to come into a stretch, we're going to kind of do the opposite here. So pull the knees up, cross one thigh over the other, and pull the legs in towards you, holding shins or backs of thighs here, or maybe the strap behind the legs, holding, relax the shoulders. Um, I like this one for stretching that buttocks, that glute medius, the piriformis. But if you prefer the ankle over knee stretch, you could change it to that one. Same muscles getting stretched, just from a different angle. When you're ready, other leg on top. Might be different side to side. Letting this go here when you're ready. Decide if there's something you'd like to do before Shavasana, knees to chest, a happy baby, an inversion, maybe a reclined twist here. Feel free to add that in. Thinking about how you'd like to set yourself up for Shavasana. It could be that butterfly position we were just in a couple of poses ago, releasing, relaxing through there. Could be legs up on the chair, legs up on the wall, maybe a different position here for your arms, or blanket underneath the spine, that supported fish we started in. Wherever you'd like to be here, a place that you can relax and rest for the next few minutes. Maybe you close your eyes, maybe not. We'll use the breath here to help us come into the rest. So you take an inhale through the nose, open the mouth, let out a sigh. And again, let the breath go. Allow the body to rest for the next few minutes. Remember, you could stay here longer, resting more. But if you're ready to move on with your day, start to deepen your breath. Include some gentle movements, fingers, toes, wrist, ankles. If it feels good, you could take a full body stretch, legs out, arms overhead. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, let it go. If you're on your back, bend the knees and roll to your side. Pause for a moment here on your side. Take a few more of those deeper breaths. Perhaps taking this opportunity to appreciate your body, your breath, your health, your yoga practice. Being gentle, press up to a seated position. Thank you all for being here, sharing your practice and your energy. If that felt like a lot of glute work, you might be wanting to break your foam roller out tomorrow to loosen some of that up. Thanks for sharing your practice.